In the last few years, cannabis stocks have been a true roller coaster for investors. After being heavily hyped during the COVID bubble, this sector has faced severe market downturns, with most stocks falling more than 90%. However, with crisis comes opportunity. And over the past few weeks, I've been researching the cannabis sector extensively. I've reviewed over 15 names, including well-known stocks like Curaleaf, Tilray, Canopy Growth, and Trulieve, and in the next videos I will present you the cannabis investment thesis and share my top stock picks with you. Now, to make this study more digestible, I've divided it into multiple videos and chapters so you can jump to the sections that interest you the most. But first, why am I looking at the cannabis sector? Because, as I think it's obvious for everyone, cannabis use is steadily growing. It's becoming increasingly common to see people using cannabis in various forms, whether it's smoked, as edibles, or as medicine, and I believe this trend will only continue in the years ahead. Cannabis usage, as shown in this chart, has been increasing among adults over the past decades, and actually nowadays many people, especially the younger generations, are replacing alcohol with cannabis. For example, 34% of people in their early 20s are choosing cannabis over alcohol, compared to 24% of those aged 25 to 34 and to 22% of those aged 35 to 54. In contrast, only 9% of people above 55 are using cannabis as a substitute for drinking. Now, when we look at the world, we see that few countries have effectively legalized cannabis 100%. The countries in blue here are the ones where cannabis possession for recreational use is legal. Uruguay was the first to do so in December 2013, followed by Georgia, South Africa, and Canada. And most recently, Germany became the biggest European country to fully legalize cannabis recreational use. Cannabis is also already 100% legal in Thailand, in Mexico, and in Malta. The countries in yellow have a more nuanced approach. Cannabis for recreational use is not legal, but it's also not considered a crime, and this represents a middle ground in cannabis regulation. And well, of course, the countries in red are the ones where cannabis is not legal at all. Now, what I believe is going to happen is that more countries will embrace legalization and regulation as our societal norms in relation to cannabis use change, which of course will be a huge opportunity. Ultimately, in the US, cannabis remains illegal at the federal level, but is already legal in 24 states, which covers a big portion of the population. And by the way, I'm leaving all the links for everything I'm using in this video in the description below. But this map will probably get greener over time as more states embrace cannabis use. After all, today more people than ever support legalization. As we can see here, in the 70s, public opinion was largely against it, but this perspective has changed over time. Now we see the opposite situation. Now, most people are in favor of legalization, around 70%. Anyway, the macro trend is undeniable. Now, what does this all represent in terms of numbers, in terms of market? Today, the US cannabis market is a $30 billion business, as we can see here. But according to Statista, it could reach over $67 billion by 2028. So the market size could double. Moreover, while most of the market is geared towards recreational use, a significant portion of it is dedicated to medical use, which has been growing a lot. Now, comparing the cannabis industry size to others. So here's the size of the current legal cannabis industry, and here's the size of the total cannabis industry, including the illicit part of it. And here's the size of the total cigarette industry. And this is the craft beer's market size. So it seems we have a lot of room for growth here. And I believe more and more people will start to buy cannabis legally. First, because recreational use will probably be expanded, and secondly, because people in the end want to buy good stuff. Nobody wants to buy a doubtful product from a drug dealer if there's another option. People prefer to buy a product in which they trust that has quality control and that is official. Now, we've already seen the huge growth potential that this industry has. However, this segment also faces significant challenges. If you examine the financials of most cannabis companies, you will see that the majority of them is bleeding, is operating at huge losses. It's astonishing. And a key factor in this lack of profitability is the excessive taxation imposed by Section 280E. You see, for over 50 years, cannabis has been classified as a Schedule 1 drug, which means that cannabis is being put in the same basket as drugs like heroin. This classification also doesn't recognize cannabis medical use and leads to severe fiscal complications. After all, these companies are not allowed to deduct expenses in their tax calculations, as these are classified as being related to the trafficking of Schedule 1 substances, which are the most dangerous types of drugs. Their income tax, thus, is based on gross income, which results in very high taxes. This way, if cannabis was reclassified to Schedule 3, this would significantly bolster profitability for these businesses. In addition to the tax issues, this sector faces other significant challenges. For example, cannabis companies cannot transport their products across state lines, as cannabis is not legal at the federal level, which results in all kinds of operational problems. Now, while rescheduling cannabis wouldn't instantly resolve all these difficulties overnight, it would indeed represent a crucial step forward. It would mark a substantial advance in how cannabis is perceived and accepted by society. This shift in perception could, over time, ease the way for this industry, making future operations smoother and more integrated. Now, initially, I wasn't really sure if I wanted to dive into this sector, but I couldn't just ignore the increasingly positive landscape for this industry. The cannabis business is also hard to escalate, and honestly, most companies are bleeding. But some of them have been delivering some quite good results, standing out from the crowd. And it's about these companies that we will talk about in the next videos. Well, that's it for today. See you next time.